It's my great pleasure to welcome Madhukiran Medithe, the Chief Data and AI Officer for Rakuten Mobile. Please put your hands together, ladies and gents. Thank you. So, Madhu, as I've said several times there, in fact, your role now is somewhat unique in telecom, and I suppose across many other industries as well, come to think of it. But given the group is now relying on you so heavily for Rakuten Mobile's future, what importance do you think the Chief Data Officer is going to play in telecom going forward?
Thanks, James, and I think it's loud and clear, yeah. So first of all, good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be in this meeting. Yeah, so James, we keep talking about what is the role of Chief Data Officer and how they are going to change the dynamics in the telecom industry. So in 2019, when we set up this organization, especially we wanted to go in the AI front. Basically, the entire network needs to be deployed on the AI segment. That is one of the key thumb rule which we followed that. So from there, we started working on capturing the data and doing analytics on the top. Mainly, if you see in the telecom industry, from last 2 decades, what I am saying is, so we should change our, of course, already attitude has been changed coming from standard telecom services, which is basically keep talking about previous discussions, kind of a commodity service or basically a utility service, right? So now the transformation, what I see from couple of years, mainly when we see from the 4G perspective, where you can see the data usage per subscriber has been increased. The stat says that close to 30% of the subscriber data has been increased per subscriber data, meaning the data capture is actually increasing a lot. So you have a lot of insights about the subscriber prospect. That's where the revenue is actually. Meaning, it's not, there is a trade-off, yes, there is a trade-off between your coverage versus number of sites versus subscriber experience versus your ARPU. So the main things comes under, basically if you see be it in 3G or 4G or 5G, your deployment cost would be increasing close to 9 to 10%, but the operation cost is increasing to 30 to 50%. That's where your AI has to come over there. So when you start deploying your AI modules, right? So eventually your AI modules will start looking into the network performance, talking about where you have to capture your sites, talking about where your revenue is, what data is being used at what level. So this entire thing, you will be coming to know when you start looking at the data, you start seeing the data, you start feeling the data. That's where the data science team or CDO team or AI team, where I have play a vital role. That's what I can see that.
So you've given several examples there. Let's kind of try to drill down into those to some degree. So there's obviously incessant hype now about artificial intelligence across every industry, but Rakuten Mobile and Rakuten Group already has tangible examples of how we're doing this firsthand. Can you give some of those examples to our audience here in terms of what you're already doing and how we're putting those models to use?
Right. Before getting into what we do in Rakuten, what I would like to address, the brownfield deployment subscribers, the network operators, they have humongous amount of data, right? They're capturing in one of the discussions, a few days back when I was talking in DSP event, one of the gentlemen is talking about they have around close to 140 plus years of data in the network. So he's very rich, meaning he knows how his network is behaving. But the point is, the data should not be in distributed way. The data should be in a unified way. So then only you can get into the analytics, then only you can see the correlation between the data usage versus what subscriber is working on and what applications are being used, right? So now coming to what we have done in the Rakuten as a group, the group having close to 90 million subscribers is one of the biggest e-commerce or fintech business in Japan, Rakuten is. And Rakuten Mobile is one of the groups in that. So using that data and our subscribers, we try to do the segmentation, subscriber profiling, and the recommendations. That's where we have done that. So from the day one onwards, we have obligations, we have limitations. These particular sites we need to deploy as per our compliance perspective. But how many sites? What is the coverage? What is usage? That's where your AI will play in the trade-off over there. So those modules eventually we're onboarding into some of the tools, the planning tools, where we call as a RAN commander, Basically, it's in-house tool which we deployed. It talks about our capacity. So every day, the dynamics of the network is keep changing. That's what even the previous fireside discussion has been mentioned by Graham. So each parameter, what you change in the network, you will see a lot of dynamics happening in that. Even though you have slicing environments happening over there, when you change anything in the core parameter, definitely there is an impact. So you have to have your training model always up and running. So this what we learned from the group, and that's how we implied in Rakuten Mobile.
I mean, that's something you've touched on previously, certainly in our conversations, is that these parameters are constantly changing. It's not the same necessarily day to day, week to week.
Yeah.
So how are you learning to pivot as you go and sort of learn on the job, as it were, with these models?
So we need to have a robust data platform to understand what parameters doing. Basically, when you stream the data in the real time, so your model should be up and have to pick up the parameters or change what is happening in the network, and it has to do the reinforcement. So to get into this kind of loop, talking is very simple, but the point of implement is very, very tough. When you try to use change some parameter, what are the dynamics? Neighbor cells will be getting impacted. Subscribers experience will get impacted. So lot many variations are there. So how we do is we need to have our own reinforcement mechanism, and the challenge part is how you testing this kind of things. That's one of the biggest challenge. Let's say when you're talking about AI model, right? You want to implement that, you want to deploy some particular machine learning model, but the point is how are you going to test it? So that's the biggest challenge coming to the telecom industry when you want to use the AI.
I know you've.
Yeah.
Apologies,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, something I was going to add to that, I suppose, is that you've previously mentioned the importance of ensuring your large language models are tailored specifically to the use case that you need.
Yeah.
It's no good going in there with generic technology to solve vague problems. They need to be specific to the problems that need to be solved. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Let's say, adding to the question which you're talking about, yes, there is a lot of hype, especially from a couple of months, what we can see when OpenAI has launched their LLMs, and everybody's talking about. Recently, Apple is also talking about their Apple AI, right? Apple Intelligence, what they're implementing and using ChatGPT, right? So even telecom industry is also adapting towards that. But the thin part here is how we have to train your model. Let's say some standards or specifications with relates to 3GPP, where you have your own standards defined, which are available in the internet, and some are with respect to the ORAN standards, which are available in the internet. Yes, your LLMs definitely will work towards that, some of the use cases. But the main challenge is you have your own signature. Let's say I'm working on interference mitigation in my network. So I have my own formula to identify the degree of interference. Those are not available in your LLM models. So for what we have to do is you have to do your own intent learning. You have to do your customized ML model or AI model for those LLMs. So that's, you have to invest your time. So still, it's quite early to say that LLMs definitely will change the entire dynamics of the telecom industry. But we need to understand how much you have to invest over there. The trade-off versus resources, versus your time, versus your efficiency. We are still keenly watching and understanding the things. We are working. We are also doing our own intent learning using LLMs. But yes, it's quite early to say that LLMs will change the telecom dynamics. But at an extent, mainly when you talk about customer experience service kind of applications, or when you're talking about some kind of image processing applications, definitely the fast resolution will be having, like sentiment analysis. These are all things we spoke in previous discussions also. Those are all things quite easily we can do with LLMs. But the main crux is the parameters relates to RAN, the parameters relates to your core, really needs to be done your own intent learning, or customized machine learning or AI learning has to be done there.
So it's fair to say at this point in time there is cause for optimism, but still very much work to be done.
Yeah.
What mistakes have you seen in the industry in terms of how data and AI are being used? You've talked about hype there, of course, but what shortcomings and mistakes would you like to see rectified that are currently being made?
Yeah, it's a good and challenging question. Basically, what mistakes means, when you wanted to get into the operations seamlessly, definitely you need to have some intelligent automation. When you talk about intelligent automation, it's not basic static learning or basic machine learning. Definitely will not help you there. So you have to invest your time on defining your AI models, right? Your deep learning things and all this stuff. So now the lessons what I see is from my past history. So as I mentioned in the first point itself only, your data should not be in distributed way. You should have a unified data lake, right? You should have your own data sets, data engineering, data features to be properly pipelined, and your data dictionary should be properly pipelined. On the top, you have your own data discovery. Okay. So now, what I see from the past to now, what I'm experiencing from the Rakuten is main thing is the openness. So the operator should be open to take the new vendors, because when you have openness, when you have the open interfaces, eventually you will capture the data at bit level and byte level. In milliseconds level, you start capturing the data. So that's where you are actually the OPEX cost you would be getting reduced. When you have data at lowest granularity level, your machine learning or AI will be the best efficiency will try across, close to 80 to 85 percent of accuracy you will have it. So that level of data needs to be streamlined. So that can only possible when you do openness, when you start capturing the data at each and every interface, not at aggregated data. Again, when you do the aggregated data, definitely you will miss out a lot of anomaly data points. But when you go with openness, when you have your own streaming lines, when you get each and every millisecond of data into your data lake, you have on the top, you have your intelligent data platform, top of your applications running. That's where we see it. That's where we are able to roll out our network close to 3 years. And I would say that 300K, 350K as on date, we have rolled out our network. And that's where we have reduced our operations cost as well. In the previous discussion, one of the gentlemen is asking like coverage or the subscriber count or your benefits, right? Revenue generation. So that's where ARPU will increase. So when you try to decrease your OPEX cost, when you're adapting the AI in your network, that's where your ARPU will be increasing it. Your operation cost will decrease, and the subscriber pattern is the same. He will use the same amount of data. But how are you addressing the issues in the network with respect to the customer experience or the coverage, and how are you closing the loop in a given couple of seconds to milliseconds? That's where your OPEX will come into more optimized.
I'll just pick up on one thing you mentioned there, because you've talked about openness, and I think some skeptics might say that Rakuten has had a certain advantage being a greenfield, Rakuten Mobile that is. Do you think, is there any specific advice you would give to brownfields in terms of how they can, not coming from the openness background and that day zero of a data lake, what advice would you give in terms of sort of playing catch up in that sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm closely watching this ORAN standards also in different working groups, including your security and ORAN, with respect to the RAN environment, and how they're talking about other variants and other segments of the network versus monolithic kind of deployment, right? So some of the vendors, they have their own element management systems, they have their own data lake, they have their own database, right? So that data needs to be shared across. So again, I'm mentioning about when you wanted to do any AI, when you wanted to have an OPEX to be reduced using your machine learning things, you should have a minute level of data. Very, very lowest granular level of data. Then only you can understand your subscriber, how it is behaving it. Talking about efficiency perspective. So now to get into that, one thing what I can see is Open RAN is giving good visibility, because you have enriched interfaces are there. And on the top, you have your own data pipelines, you can create it, right? So second thing, what I can see from the brownfield, yes, they have actually more advantage compared with the greenfield operators, because they already have the data. They know where to deploy, what technology to deploy. Let me tell you one thing. Let's say it's not only the base station, right? I'm looking at a connectivity perspective. Your connectivity could be the RAN, or connectivity with the 4G or 3G, and your Wi-Fi also, right? So now every operator having 4G connectivity or 5G connectivity, and they're also connecting towards the Wi-Fi network. So end of the day, if you see per subscriber perspective, is calculating the data consumption from Wi-Fi towards the 3GPP terminologies, 4G and 5G, 3G and so if I aggregate all these things, that's what I said earlier, 30% to 40% data rate has been improved. That's what stats says that today. Even 4G, 3G to 4G, 40% data consumption per subscriber has increased. In the same way, 4G to 5G, around 25% data consumption has been increased per subscriber. Eventually, when subscribers start using the data, that's where the revenue is actually hidden inside. So brownfield having the more advantage because of they already have the data, but the main crux, the main thing is relates to how they're using the data, how they're defining their KPIs, how they're doing the data pipelining and the AI models. That's where plays a vital role.
Let's maybe move the conversation on to some of the advice you would give other telcos who are looking to use AI in particular. I know that the topics of governance and compliance are very important to you. That's something you've spoken about very publicly before. You've said that without those frameworks in place, it's almost a non-starter. What would you add in terms of how governance and compliance must be used in order to drive successful AI initiatives?
Yeah, this is an important question as not only the governance side using the data, but also the challenge role for the CDO, Chief Data Officer, AI Officer. It's one of the biggest challenges. So when you have ecosystem, you have a lot of data, a lot of demographics, a lot of location informations, minute level information of the subscriber, you have it. So you cannot give access to the entire team. You have to define each and every data bin. You have to define with a secured layer, right? Who are all accessing the particular layer of the data. So that level of minute information, you should start capturing it. Or else, we will be violating the, data governance. You will be violating the compliance side. So let's say Japan and US and of course most of the countries, all countries, they have their own compliance. We cannot use the subscriber data. We cannot violate the data without having users' consent, right? So I cannot, let's say, I have seen some of the operators, they are giving their own customized packages to the subscribers. But if I see in Japan, I cannot go customized packages to per subscriber perspective. I cannot do that. I have to give any plan. It has to be considering all the subscribers today, all 120K and 120 million subscribers. That it's to be same. So we cannot target each and every subscriber as per their own customized plan. So we have to play very, very diligently over there. We have to be very, very cautious what exactly you're trying to feed from that, what message you're giving to the your marketing team, right? So that's where your thin layer comes into picture of data compliance and data discovery part. So you should have your own security. You should know what data your engineers are using it and how much data they're trying to share outside. So the biggest point what I'm trying to say is the data monetization. When you are in an ecosystem where you have mobile as an operator and you have your other ecosystem products, right? Using the subscriber correlation, that's where the data monetization comes into picture. So you have a lot of work to do there. So that's where your actual wealth is actually hidden. So that's what we got an advantage when we started looking to our ecosystem data. We're able to see, okay, what the subscriber is, what kind of applications is trying to use in my network, and what products is actually trying to see in e-commerce business side. So my understanding, what we see from last couple of years, telecom should not be a commodity or utility product. It is a platform. It's a platform where it enables other applications to be, play on the top. Be it fintech, be it your e-commerce, or your beauty applications, or some other applications. It has to provide this platform. So your device is basically an application where you're downloading all your apps, and your telecom infrastructure is your platform where it plays on the top.
It's interesting you touch upon that. I think we actually had one question from the audience before that kind of related to some of the things you've touched upon there. Obviously, Rakuten to some extent to quite a large extent has an advantage because of the wider ecosystem. But how do you think telcos, generally speaking, can look to replicate those kind of services and outcomes if they don't have the data to begin with from across that kind of ecosystem? And how can they specialize to ensure that they deliver the best possible outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, even the same case, it happened with Rakuten Mobile also. So initially we went with, when we launched we started deploying in 2019 onwards. We don't have the data, right? So whatever the data I have in the group data, definitely it cannot be used in the day one itself only. It took some time for me to start understand the data. It took me to a couple of years to correlate the data, to understand the subscriber behavior, to work on the recommendation functions, right? So we went with domestic roaming when we start rolling out our network. Initially, we had our own network in a couple of areas, prime areas in Japan, and then other areas we had with our domestic partner. But the way we rolled out is based on the usage of the data, right? Based on the subscriber behavior and the way they keep moving in the network, right? So that's what we started, capturing or identifying our cells, rolling out the network very, very fastly, very, very quickly within the MIC obligations. So that's where we are able to roll out.
Yeah. So MIC, just for context, that's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications Japan. Apologies.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So MIC is a regulatory governance body of Japan. So so in that way, we're able to roll out our network in a defined timeline. Actually, we are 1 year ahead than actually we planned when we're doing the mass rollout of 99.2%. Now it is close to 99.4% of coverage, subscriber coverage it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Madhu. I think we have a couple of minutes just for questions for Madhu to keep us on track. The gentleman there.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you.
Good morning. Being a chief data and AI officer, and with the rapid advancement of these two technologies, how do you envision the role of telecom operators using these evolving two areas, not only improve the customer satisfaction and all, but how to optimize the network,
right,
and also drive new revenue streams for them in next 5 years?
So the same question actually I can relate has happened in the last fireside discussion. So let's say based on the usage in my network of my subscriber, you will have multiple different segment of customers. Some people using gaming applications, some are only the VoLTE applications are calling a user, some are actually basic data users. So in any network, if you see, 20% of the subscribers are always, heavily subscribers basically. If any operator, that's 20% of the subscribers always, go with the high consumption of the data. Could be the data, they would be high downloading users, that could be gaming users. So that's where your slicing comes into picture, network slicing. That's where your even RAN intelligent controller. So you have to adapt your new technologies also. So if I see the standards also from 5G onwards, the network functions, they segregated everything. They have decoupled, right? So where it giving more leverage to operator to integrate new technologies on the top, right? You have NWDAF, you have your RIC. When you connect these two figures together, RIC and NLF, you can play optimized way of service to the subscribers without hitting their efficiency. So in that way, you are able to achieve your data rates at high data rates, making customer satisfaction with a new technology. That's what this RIC and NWDAF, they will be connected via AI applications, where your AI has to play a vital role over there. So the moment when you start getting into the applying your AI models on these particular tools, right, definitely you will achieve better experience with less cost. So next 5 years, what I can see, that's what I told in the previous points also. We are not seeing telecom as an utility anymore at all. It's a platform where enabling subscribers to start using the data as much as you will train your model. I know this X number of subscribers, this particular segment are exclusively targeting my gaming applications or some heavy downloading applications. I do customized slicing to them, right? That's where I'm trying to define my RAN efficiency also. That's where I'm defining my computes in my core network as well. So that's where you have to play. That's where AI comes into a bigger role. So I see the change already started. The only thing is, some of the openness needs to be come into picture. Interfaces has to be open. So the moment when you start opening up your interfaces from RAN to the core to the API gateway, eventually you will know what is happening in your network. The moment when you look into the aggregated data, a lot of things will be averaged out, right? Let's say 15 minutes to 30 minutes, the data is averaged. So you will not get much insights. When you go to lowest level, you see at what spike at PRB level. I mean that is the lowest time slot. That's where we capture. At that level, you start capturing it. Then you know what cell at what time congestion is happening. You can do prediction according to that. You can do forecast according to that. So what behavior is happening in the RAN is actually coming from the replication from the core. The same thing has been said in the previous discussion. So yes, this is the transformation is happening. That's where I see the telecom is going to next 5 years. It's going to play a massive role.
Thank you, Ray from Telecom TV. So you posed the question earlier, how do you test the impact of AI? How are you doing that?
Wow. It's really a tough question.
Is it still a work in progress?
Yeah. It's still even though we keep talking about we are advanced and we are using a lot of AI in our network, but the biggest challenge is how you test your product. Let's say digital twin is one of the products platforms which enable you to test the things in the network exclusively, right? That's a platform which we are trying to integrate in our network. But the point is how fast you react. Let's say you did some change, you rolled out your software in the network. You have did some changes in the core or in the RAN, you rolled out some software. But how much time it took you to take the decision whether the software is doing a malfunction or the experience is actually hitting down something, like how fast you're trying to react. That's the biggest challenge. So now with the digital twin, using CI/CD pipelines, right? When you are in the cloud native functions, this is actually helping you at least 50 to 60% of your timelines. You were able to reduce that. When you rolled out, I don't want to do any for site kind of like basically we will be selecting some group of sites before you rolling out some particular software. We will test for a couple of days and a couple of maybe weeks, depends upon the size of the software patches. But when you have this kind of digital twin using CI/CD pipeline, right? You know your network in real time, and whatever parameter is changed, that reflects immediately onto your platform. So these things needs to be done. These things needs to be adapted in the network. I mean, we're still in the midway. We are not 100% in that segment. That's where we are deploying RIC. RIC plays a crucial role for me in our network. And of course, NWDAF. These are the two entities going forward, plays a crucial role in telecom segment. When you're trying to do any real-time applications, when you're trying to do any change in the real-time versus to the non-real-time, yes. And adding to that, let me put one more point. Especially one of the challenges for the AI team is basically when you deploy a group of algorithms, when they're acting at the same time, there would be a collision or conflicts between the parameters will happen, right? Let's say some RF team engineer, they have their own automation. He ran his scripts, right? And some AI team, they enabled their algorithm. So we never know what parameter the RF team has been used, and we never know what ML model is trying to take from which parameter. So there will be conflict. There is no way to see what changes are being using by these particular models. So that's where you have a centric platform where your RIC is actually giving a good visibility, which particular application is being used by which particular algorithm or which particular automation framework is using which particular KPI. You will have that lowest level of opportunity to see this particular feature is going to use this much and this is what is going to impact. So this is what we are looking into that. That's where we are changing our entire direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that pretty much brings us to time. So ladies and gents, please give a big round of applause for Madhukiran Medithe, Chief Data and AI Officer for Rakuten Mobile. Thank you, Madhu.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.